Okay, resetters. So this is absolutely a spontaneous live. And sweet Dr. Nasha Winters, thank you so much for joining me on Memorial Day to talk about fasting.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so grateful that you're here. And let me just kind of let the resetters know that we're going to be on for like the next 15 minutes. I really wanted Dr. Nasha to talk about how she's using fasting in her life, because the theme of our fast training week is how do you create a lifestyle full of fasting? And there's so many of us that are doing a variety of fasts. And I know you just got done doing a 3-day water fast.
Yeah.
Do you do that often? Was that a new one?
I do, and we'll go into the why of why I do, but it's not for everybody to do it as often as I do. Yeah.
Okay, great. So why don't we do this? Let's start. If you guys have questions specifically, resetters, about fasting and cancer, here is your expert on that subject. So I'd love to pick her brain over the next few minutes on that. But why don't you jump in and from a personal level, why are you fasting and what type of fasting do you like to do?
Perfect. Well, I've been on this journey of my own health, awareness and support for, going on 28 years.
Wow.
And in fact, when I first was diagnosed with cancer, I was so sick. My abdomen was so distended from ascites that I was forced into a fast because there was no room. There was no actual real estate for anything to go inside of my body. So when I was at my sickest, there was probably I think I went about 17 days without solids, without food.
Wow.
I did have some broths. I definitely had teas and lots of water during that time. And I will tell you, this many years out, looking back, I think that was probably one of the smartest things I could have done.
Absolutely.
Okay? Right. And so I didn't, of course, know that we didn't have the research. It was just very intuitive. Though I come from a naturopathic medical background where nature cure and fasting was very much part of our lineage, that was also not too far from, what I know today. Although, remember, at this time, there was no Dr. Google. There was no internet for me at the time of my diagnosis. And this was about 5 years before I started naturopathic medical school. So it was just intuitive and out of necessity that I moved into that direction. Fast forward into my medical school training. When I was in naturopathic school, I was very lucky in that we were forced for credit and for a grade to try a variety of different diets.
Really? That's awesome.
It was awesome. They don't do this today. Okay.
Oh, bummer. I was
signing
up for that.
Exactly, because it was so helpful. So we basically had to each of us commit to, we had to pick 3 or 4 different cleanses or diets or approaches over a semester period and basically do each one for at least 2 weeks. And then kind of report back our symptoms to the class and teach each other. It was fantastic. So I did, what was that? At that time, it was that Arise and Shine cleanse, which is...
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So I think about the smell of apple juice and psyllium husk and throw up a little bit in my mouth. But I did that. I did a Puron water fast, and I did a full juice fast in that window of time. And I also did a khichdi cleanse. So just to give you a sense of kind of the variety of things I tried, plus my class did a bunch of other options. And what I found in that window of time, this is probably within the first 2 years of my medical school, is that I always have, since the beginning of time, feel better if I don't eat. If I could eat a breatharian, I would be. And so part of that is because I'm very metabolically flexible compared to, say, my husband, and I'll talk about his experience of this recently.
Maybe we should have grabbed him on here too.
We should have. He ran out the door like, don't throw me under the bus. But the reality is we're all very different. And I've had, since the time I was born, my mom and everybody will tell you, I had so many digestive issues. I always had a big drum belly. For me, I have so many food sensitivities, gut, microbiome dysbiosis patterns that really where I feel the best is when I don't eat. Now that could fall into the realm of disordered eating patterns. So don't, catch me when I tell you that. It wasn't a matter of I just didn't want to eat. It's just that my body really does do well when I give it a break. And that seems to quiet down all my inflammation, all of my autoimmune patterns, all of my sort of cancering processes. It helps clear my head in a really powerful way. And so over the past probably decade, I have really incorporated a more regular fast in my life, because prior to that, from medical school on, I probably did 2 big cleanses or 2 big fasts a year, anywhere from 5 to 14 days.
Wow.
So no problems with me on that. But now what I've gotten accustomed to in the last several years was really doing, for me, works well for my body, a 2 to 3 day fast every month.
Yeah.
And there'll be times that I get into that and I want to go longer. I'll just feel intuitive. And it usually seems to hit around change of season, you know, after a big stress event, you know, where I've really created a lot of inflammation in my physiology from a lot of intense travel or stressful, you know, events, speaking engagements, etc. So it's just become a part of my lifestyle on a regular basis.
Is it intuitive? Is it like you just kind of go, oh, I just need to do a water fast now?
Yeah, it really is. And one of the things I'll tell you, you know, that I have learned, because I'm still a cycling woman, which always freaks people out when they know I have a cancer history, because I think people assume I have all of my parts removed, but somehow miraculously I maintained all of those. And actually for years, I mean, my mom and I were just having this discussion a week or so ago. I had severe endometriosis, and I was pretty much always bleeding and always in extreme pain, unless, you know, in all these patterns. So now, all these years later, going into the perimenopause window, I think that fasting has been part of what has cleared out that estrogen dominance and androgen dominance pattern within my polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometrial patterns. I don't have endometriosis anymore. I don't have those symptoms anymore. And so it's really incredible that I think that that was really helpful. But the caveat is, as a woman who's still very regularly cycling, I know that I cannot fast a few days before I bleed.
Yep. This is what I've been preaching. And I'm the same way. Like once my cycle starts, just take food out of my refrigerator and I'll be fine.
Totally.
But the week before, I'm going to come hunt you down.
I'm like in the neighbor's refrigerator, like, I mean, it's incredible how that's actually my first clue. Like, oh, we are in a shift, a hormonal shift. It's so powerful to me to know our bodies so well.
Powerful. Agreed. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Okay. So, and that is a point, like I say over and over and over again. And I think that it makes perfect sense why as women, were we meant to eat the same way every single month, day of the month? Our hormones are doing this all the time. So that just doesn't make sense. So, okay. So you do a 3-day water fast every month-ish. And what about intermittent?
8 weeks are the maximum I go now between, usually monthly. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. What about intermittent fasting? Do you intermittent fast every day?
So every single day, and this is what I actually kind of segues into the cancer conversation.
Yes.
I really encourage people to do 13 hours every day, no matter what.
Yes.
No matter what. And that's based on the, just giving the body that little bit of a break, that we naturally should be breaking a fast, that we should naturally be giving a little rest to our digestion and just the basics. But we've all gotten so far away from that. I mean, how many times do you hear patients having to have a snack right before bed, or wake up in the middle of the night to get a snack, or have to eat the second they jump out of bed in the morning? That's a good sign of instability in their metabolic process. So 13 hours every day. And that's actually been sort of supported by some data that's come out from MD Anderson in the last few years of a large study that looked at, I think, over 40,000 women who simply, they didn't even look at what they ate. They just looked at the timing in which they ate. And those that went 13 hours or longer without ingesting any solids, any food, had a 70% decreased risk of recurrence.
So I remember you saying that when we did the Resetter TV together. I was like, that is so amazing. So when people are asking about cancer prevention, at least go 13 hours. I mean, that would, just because the study was done on breast cancer, it seems like we should, I mean, let's all just go 13 hours all the time.
Exactly. Because again, where were we, like, just grazing 24/7 for, millennia? It's never happened. That's a relatively new invention to our physiology of eating, being able to eat as much and as often as we do today. That's actually, I think, a lot of our problems.
Yeah, agreed.
So giving ourselves that window. And if you can't go a simple 13 hours, that's where you work with somebody like you, Mindy, and to help someone get themselves, moved into that flexibility realm so that they can. And that's going to be kind of goal one. That is what I recommend everybody does every day. Then the next thing I do twice a week, I go 16 to 18 hours. So take a little bit of a deeper dive and just give a little bit extra break on those days. And it's like, and I mix it up. I used to be pretty habitual with it, but then I found that even my body, it anticipated it. So I'll shake that up and I kind of look at my schedule ahead and decide what days work the best for me. And sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, it might just be spontaneous or intuitive, or it just seems like a great day to do it, or I just simply forget and suddenly it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And might as well have a snack, right?
Right.
And then that 3 times, that 3 day a month process. Now, that recommendation of the 13 hours daily, 16 to 18 twice a week, and 3 a month is actually what I recommend pretty much all my patients dealing with cancer treatment, cancer prevention does without fail. Okay.
That's awesome.
Just a basic. And again, it will vary individual to individual depending on their needs, depending on the big picture. But you have to remember, I take a deep dive with these folks, so I really know where they are to make that recommendation. But specific to the cancer realm, there are people like Dr. Walter Longo and his research. I remember hearing him, I can't remember if it was 2012 or 13, at a conference where he said, if patients with cancer simply water fasted 5 days every month, that would be more potent than chemotherapy.
Wow. Yeah.
So
and I've heard that's crazy. And I hope everybody who's listening that has a cancer diagnosis just heard that, because it doesn't take money to fast. That's the biggest thing I love about fasting, is that anybody can do it. You just have to get yourself metabolically flexible so that the process is a little bit easier. And I had heard Dominic D'Agostino say that for those of us that want to prevent cancer, that if you did 3 to 5 3-day water fasts a year, you would reduce your chances of cancer. I mean, and again, we're in the ballpark of just fast a lot, but do you agree with that statement?
I do, because I think that there is, we look at, again, let's look at all of the different cultures that are out there that naturally go into a fasting state as part of a spiritual practice, much less a health practice. So even if we're looking at people who are just breaking a fast into the dinner time meal, or breaking the fast by just having a breakfast every day, even that is an extended fast for several days to several weeks per year that we have. There's actually really cool studies on people's health markers through, say, Ramadan or say through Lent. And you can see a pretty drastic change in their biomarkers just within that window of time. And we know if we lower inflammation and we regulate insulin and we, kind of just give the body a break from digesting so much, it's an enormous amount of our energy goes in that realm, we can really do the body good. And so an example of that is my husband and I, for 7 years, we worked at Sundance for every summer through a period of a 7-year period of time, where I worked in the medicine tent and he worked in the kitchen. And what that is it's a Native American ceremony. It's based on a Lakota tradition, but this was actually held in the Four Corners, and the concept of this Sundance was Little Big Medicine. So there were lots of there were people from Africa, there were Rituali medicine, men, there were all types of tribal, peoples, indigenous peoples there from all over the world that were celebrating present in this ritual, the ceremony. But the main focus of the ceremony was a 5-day water fast and or tea fast, where they are, out under the hot sun, dancing from sunrise to sunset, sweat lodging in the morning and night. If they're going to ingest anything, it was typically peyote tea. Okay. Yeah. Just say that for your group. And these were folks who cold turkeyed their blood pressure meds, their cardiovascular meds. So I worked in the medicine tent in anticipation of seeing things like walls crash down, right? It was incredible what would change in someone. And we would have pre and post labs. We would have glucose monitoring, ketone monitoring. We would have, all these means of kind of testing what was going on for folks. And you could watch people completely change their entire physiology in a matter of 5 days. So the power of that. And of course, in the realm of a spiritual gathering, a ceremony, just not unlike what you do with these resetter fasting groups. There's something very powerful with group organized, approach.
Yeah. And I think what I love about it is it allows people to start to realize that their bodies are powerful, that we were born in this miracle and nobody teaches us how to use it. So when you take food out of the equation, you get to just sit back and kind of go, okay, this is pretty cool. It can do a lot of really neat things. So I have a funny story to tell you about, or an interesting one. Yesterday, we were at our local farmer's market, and there's one booth where we get our kombucha from this one lovely family. And they're Muslim, and they're observing Ramadan. And so we got talking to them, and we're like, oh, are you fasting right now? And it's a mother-son that are working the booth, and the son is like in his 20s. And he says, it's such a great time to just, cleanse our bodies, but we cleanse our mind too. And he said, and so, for example, we're not allowed to lie during that time. Yeah. And we're not allowed to think, negative or contemplate negative thoughts. So there's not a lot of complaining. And he said, he joked and he said, I was yesterday, my mom asked me a question. I was going to tell her a lie and then I realized, oh, it's Ramadan. I can't do that. And I thought, that is awesome. We should be fasting our mind too. It's a great time to just stop complaining, just to, it's not just about not putting food in, but it's an opportunity to really just be at peace in the mind.
I love it. That's one of the things I'm sure you and all of your followers will say, that the amount of sort of mental energy and clarity and time to contemplate on a spiritual level, or just time because you're not spending it shopping for food or preparing food or washing up after the meal, that you have so much more time for deeper self-care and awareness. I think that's a really discussed benefit.
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay, let's see. We got a couple questions, and then I want to hear what some of your fasting tips are for new people. Let's see, my body's, okay, hold on. Some of them are just comments. Some of them are hellos and comments. Okay, how do you like to feed your gut bacteria? Do you have like a strategy for, I know that's not a fasting question, but do you have a strategy for feeding your gut bacteria?
Well, and it's interesting because I think for me, actually, because of kind of just jumping into this world with a pretty messed up microbiome, I actually think for me, fasting helps reset my gut microbiome. I've watched that through my timing of testing on Ubiome and Viome over the years, as well as Genova and some of the other testing, to see that fasting really makes a difference in my microbiome balance. So that in and of itself is quite helpful. The other thing is my mom will tell you also as a kid, my favorite food was pickles. Still is.
Oh, smart.
I love that. So where everyone else goes and takes electrolytes, I drink pickle juice. That's one of my favorites. I also love my raw apple cider vinegar. I like tart sour. That's probably a theme that's coming through here. Yeah. I also love raw sauerkraut juice, which is also one of the most profound ways to break down glyphosate. Now, mind you, I don't eat a diet that has any glyphosate residues in it, but my husband and I just got tested with Great Plains Laboratories. And even though the range should be, I think they give a range up to 6, it really should be under 2. And actually 0 is where we would ideally be. But it surprised me, given that we don't eat grains, we don't eat legumes, we don't drink California wines, we don't live near anybody spraying glyphosate within a 2-mile radius, that I was still shocked to see that I'm around a 1.8. So that's just what's in our rainwater. That's just what's around us. So having a little bit of sauerkraut juice is known to degrade glyphosate pretty dang quickly.
Oh, so, that's awesome.
Isn't that cool? I mean, just super amazing. It just kind of, it's like a kryptonite for glyphosate. Yeah.
Do you know Dr. Suzanne Bennett?
Her name is very familiar.
Yeah, so I interviewed her for the Women's Summit, and she's all about kimchi. She believes that kimchi has like a different quality than sauerkraut, and she's so cute. She's just got great energy, and she's like, we could heal the world if everybody would just eat kimchi.
And I got to say, I love, because I like spicy and sour and salty. Yeah. And so I would always reach for that over sweet any day. That's just my palate. But in fact, Steve and I were for our wedding. This is our anniversary weekend. And we read at 10,000 Waves one night. And we went to the Izunami restaurant, which is up at the 10,000 Waves Asian spa in Santa Fe. And the thing they brought to our table was their start of pickles. And they had pickled zucchini. They had pickled lotus root, like a spicy pickled lotus root, which was divine. But my favorite was they had a Brussels sprout kimchi. And we literally asked if we could just get the liquid, just get it. And they're kind of like,
You're probably like the table five's a little nutso.
Seriously, and we had to reek. I mean, everybody around is like Brussels sprouts, kimchi combination. We smelled like the worst broccoli fart on the planet. But and luckily we were with each other. It's like, happy anniversary, baby, you know, but I love that flavor. I too am a kimchi junkie. So I like to get my probiotics from food if possible. And, you know, you talked about kombucha. I really like that. But for me, it's pretty high sugar from my body. But again, if you're getting it homemade and somebody else is doing it, they tend to lower, the sugar content tends to be a little bit lower than what you buy commercially. So definitely tell folks to read the labels on sugar content and how many servings are in one of those bottles. It's kind of shocking.
It's very shocking. Yeah, no, you've got to get the real low sugar one, and definitely a daily habit is going to kick you out of ketosis for sure. So yeah. Okay, last couple of thoughts, because I know you've got an appointment to get to, and we're here on Memorial Day. I mean, this is the thing.
With a bunch of viewers. I'm so
this is like, you know, we just love talking about this stuff. So so again, I'm so grateful for you coming on. Did you see my interview with Dr. Zach Bush?
Yes. So good. And I love that the documentary he just did. And just,
if people want to understand more about glyphosate, like I was thinking about your glyphosate numbers and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense after talking to Dr. Bush. Now I get, you know, like it's everywhere. And incredible. So, okay, so let's give a tip. Let's leave it at this is, you know, we've got a lot of different people in the resetter group, and some people are really expert fasters and some people are really new to fasting. So let's kind of separate it out. The people new to fasting, what tip would you give them? They're struggling, they have headaches, they're just, this sucks. You know, they don't have the nirvana that we all talk about.
Right. Well, my husband's the perfect example of this.
Okay.
So I have been trying to get him to do a 3-day fast with me for 28 years. Okay. So Steve can go, he can get to the point of a 13 to 16 hour with no problem, but he's so metabolically inflexible, as is his entire family of origin, that he becomes pretty hangry pretty quickly, pretty funky, really out of it, super lightheaded. So for Steve, he is someone who needs copious amounts of salt on everything. And what he does, when we can get him into, he just accomplished a 3-day fast beautifully with homemade bone broth that was extremely salty. I mean, he was probably getting 3 to 4 teaspoons of Himalayan salt in a day. And when he'd really feel a little shaky, he'd have half an avocado with lime and extra salt. And that got him through it. And that was the small, so even a caloric restriction down to what was probably 100, 150 calories at best with what he was ingesting was clearly, for my husband's chemistry, really good for him. And I could see the shift after about 36 hours, the lights came on.
That's awesome.
Really. And for him, the only reason he quit it at that time is he's just a major foodie and is attached. But that was this place where he reached that place of going, okay, I passed the hard part, to know that usually about 36 hours is where you'll have the roughest ride. And if you can make it through that and crutch it with things like Dr. Balterlongo, this brings in that example. For folks who are really terrified, the Prolon fasting process is a really good sort of crutch to start. Although I'll tell you, look at the ingredients, they're crap, very scary.
I know, that's what I know. I hear you.
Yeah, back in 2013 or so.
I know.
He's like, really the best part is to fast or make your own bone broth. And so really, if people could bare bone it down to a bone broth, as much herbal tea and as much water as you want, but go heavy duty on the salt, you know, the Celtic salt, the real salt, the Himalayan makes all the difference for your electrolytes. Because as soon as you drop that insulin, you start diuresing, you start dumping all that, and that's where you feel crummy.
Right. Yeah. Good. That was good. I like that advice. That was great. I might have to come up with like a new fast. Maybe I'll call it like the Steve fast, where you do avocados, avocado and bone broth.
Exactly. And it's incredible because he's kind of, you know, you don't really want to be around the scary people who are going through that stuff. And once he passed through, he felt so good. And all of his joint pain, he had a lot of old injuries and stuff that his joint pain went away. A weird skin thing he'd been having going on cleared out. I mean, it's so fast how quickly the body will take all those resources and put them where they need to be for actual healing if you give the digestive tract a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then what would you say to the person who's like been super like fasting all the time? Maybe they've been doing, we have a lot of people in this group that only do one meal a day.
Yeah.
And they, how can they, I call it stuck in a rut because I think there should be variation. What would you say would be some good tips when you're going to vary your fast? Make sure that you put these characteristics into your fasting variation.
I like that question a lot because I think that we do want to shake things up a little bit because the body gets habituated. And that concept of hormesis, that a little bit of stress to the chemistry is actually can produce some profound healing effects. So, whether you switch the time of day you have that meal, whether if you're pretty habitual with what you're eating, at least go with seasonal. So if you're kind of like always eating the same thing, just go with the seasonal vegetables or the seasonal, whatever is going on there. The other thing I'd like to incorporate in, because a lot of folks who are doing the one meal a day or just constant fasting is they're often not getting their macronutrients specific to a lot of the foods needed in the green food world. So I really like things like Dr.Cowan's garden.com, which is a powder. It's an organic permaculture, sustainably raised vegetables that are dehydrated and powdered. So a tiny, like a teaspoon of that's like 3 servings of vegetables. It's super concentrate. So it's really nice for people on the go. Like if you're making a bone broth, you could throw in a couple scoops of his burdock root, for instance, or which is another prebiotic, or some of these got a bunch of cool like perennial greens or low oxalate greens, because a lot of us end up being a little bit oxalate rich on this way of eating. So take a look at his website and some of those fun little vegetables to add into the mix that will alter the microbiome a little bit, do a little prebiotic. His leek salt and his powdered leeks are my favorite. That's about my favorite prebiotic that's out there.
What's his name?
Dr. Cowan. So Dr. Cowan, Cowan, garden.com. Dr. Cowan's garden.com.
Okay,
and
awesome.
It's pricey, but they are so concentrated, will last you for months and months and months. And they're great also if folks are camping or hiking. Or traveling a lot. I'll take some bone broth, powdered bone broth, a couple different scoops of those vegetables, throw them in a Ziploc baggie, and on the road, I'll just add hot water in my hotel room, and I have a meal.
Great idea. Oh my gosh. Okay, you taught me something. I'm gonna go check that out. I interviewed Dr. Terry Walls for the Women's Summit. Yeah, right. I was starstruck. I was starstruck. I was like,
I would have been too.
Anyways, a couple things I learned from her. I think the biggest one is that she recommends that you get over 200 different varieties of plants. Yes. And so we started counting, and you have to work at it. But then when you hear something like that resource, you realize where you could start to bring in a lot of different variety. So
exactly. And that's where go check out his list, or a lot of vegetables or perennial plants that you might have never heard of or tried. And they add in such another element of complexity into marinades or sauces, or just sprinkled onto salads and whatnot. That's going to help you nutrient load in that realm. But that's huge. And like you said, a couple other ways, like exercising in a fasted state, meditating in a fasted state. It's very powerful. Just different things like that, or hot and cold. Like I love to do, kind of the hot and cold plunges and whatnot to also kind of stimulate changes in the physiology in a fasted state as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is like what you resetters need to know is I literally just emailed Dr. Nasha, and she's like, yeah, let's do this. And I just love your flexibility, and I always learn something from you. So this was awesome. And if you're open to it, what I'll do is if people have questions for you, if you want to leave it on this thread in the resetters, it can be very difficult to find some of the questions. But if you have a question for Dr. Nasha, leave it on here. She's in the resetter group. And if you don't mind popping in and giving your 2 cents, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. And may you all have a blessed, hopefully last day of your holiday weekend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ciao.
Have a great one.
Thanks.
Hey, Dr. Mindy here, and if you enjoyed this video, please share it out to the world. I'm trying to get really cutting-edge health information into people's hands. And if you want to see more videos like this, just subscribe to my channel and you'll get updates as to when I go live and new videos that I put out there. Every Thursday, by the way, I do a live video from here and answer your questions. So if there are questions you want me to answer, join me then and I'll make sure that I address them. Thanks. Have an awesome day.